Hope everybody's doing great today. How you doing? I am David Long. You know what it is. It's that Q&A. Number 8, by the way. Let me go ahead and jump right into it. If you're watching this in the future on YouTube, please go to my I Am Friends and Fans group and join that group. That's where the conversation is going down. That's the group that you're going to want to be a part of. Now let's see. Let's start off by talking about some of the stuff that I have going and what's going on. Before I jump into some of those Q's and A's, if you have any of those Q's, go ahead and type them down below and I'll see if I can't produce some kind of an A for you. Integral Review recently came out with review of Mario's review, and maybe some of you saw a couple days ago I put out the UpdateAQAL video about Oliver's Prism versus the Quadrants, and I offered up a whole bunch of new ideas about ways of representing the quadrants in the integral map, as well as I came out with that Reddit page where you guys can submit your ideas about how to refine the AQAL map and make it better. I feel like this is really something special for the integral community. We have stolen the fire from the gods and brought it down and given it to the people, and taken the map from just being one man's idea about how it's supposed to be and brought it online for us to be able to discuss and refine it together. I think that's super important work and I'm really proud to be a part of it, and I'm super excited about us doing more work to refine it together over time. So reddit.com/r/updateaqal, subscribe to that. That's going to be awesome stuff. Some of you might have noticed that I'm rocking the best meta theory Davidian style on my shirt, and you should go to the Society6 page and go get yourself one. It's looking pretty smooth, right? Got my signature on the sleeve over here, got the spiral on the sleeve and quadrants on the chest. You could imagine someone like standing behind me in the grocery line while I'm checking out, reading the back of my shirt, learning integral theory just because he's standing behind me. Or like, let's say you want to school somebody, you can point to your shirt. Also, check this out. You're going to school where you need to school some people, pack it up. Purple Tribe style. I got lots of cool things at my society6.com/davidlong. My girlfriend is also bringing me this other shirt from my Nature Kaleidoscope series. The signature on the sleeve. I got this shirt for my girlfriend. It looks pretty awesome on her. Oh! Last thing, my album. And I'm really excited about sharing it with you. Hopefully by the end of the year we'll be having it out. All right. You guys ready to jump into this Q&A? Let's go ahead and do it. I'm gonna go ahead and sit down. Look, my bud Kai is letting me borrow his circle light so I can stay well lit. Got that green screen. My whole house is like an art studio. Also, on my Society6 page, I got mugs, I got rugs, I got shower curtains, I got tapestries, whatever you need. So today we're gonna be talking a little bit about types. I haven't really articulated any of this stuff before, and I haven't written anything down, I don't have any notes or anything, so I'm just gonna try my best to think out loud about some of these topics, and we'll have a conversation. If you have any ideas, put them down below. Let's talk about it some more. I actually think that types is one of the least well-established aspects of integral theory. Maybe one of the most misunderstood aspects of it. So when we think about types, we think people have particular personality traits or patterns that they just always have, no matter what, they are this type. I don't know how I feel about that. You know how Ken Wilber sometimes talks about these cosmic grooves that get laid down? I think types are more like personal habits. For example, when I go to do dishes, I like to organize all the dishes before I start. That's just how I approach a situation. I want to step back outside of it, I want to organize it all, understand how all the parts relate to the whole, and then begin. That's just my style. I would probably approach just about every problem in that way because it's worked for me in the past. And because it's worked for me in the past and it seems like a good style, I'll probably apply that same style no matter what kind of problem I'm presented with. That's what I'll probably try and do. Other people have different styles that have worked for them. So basically what I'm saying, I think types is something like these kinds of personal habits, these styles that we've adapted that have worked for us over time, and so it becomes our constant style. Now, a lot of times when people are critical of types, first we'll talk about what John is asking. He's asking about Briggs-Myers types. First of all, he says it wasn't developed by anybody who knows anything about psychology, and that it was developed by these two ladies who were completely unqualified. They couldn't even type themselves. Okay, first of all, I'm completely unqualified. I have no special pieces of paper. So if you care about that, bye! It's an appeal to authority. It's a type of ad hominem, a way to dismiss the validity of these ideas. So first of all, I don't find that to be that compelling. Second of all, I don't think it was really developed by these people. It comes from the ideas of Carl Jung. He was the guy who said that people tend to be introverts or extroverts, or tend to be more judging or perceiving. These are sliding scales of opposites, not hard and fast types like, you're a this. Even the way these tests work, they ask you a bunch of questions that are hinting towards both sides. They let you see where you fall on this sliding scale. For example, I generally test INTJ or INFJ. It's gone back and forth. Now, do I say, see, that proves Briggs-Myers is wrong? No, I don't. I think what that proves is that I'm close to the center on that thinking and feeling line. And that's good. That's healthy, actually. I think usually when people are super proud of their type, the problem with that is they're super proud of all the ways they're off balance. They're basically making a virtue of the ways that they're off balance. We should all be shooting to try and get towards the middle. It's a good thing to find that balance in the middle between these extremes. If you're too extroverted, that's unhealthy. If you're too introverted, that's unhealthy. It's not actually debunking types to see people move more towards the middle or if people's tests change. As we move through stages of development, the way that we translate our relationship with our type will change because it takes on the inflection of the attitude and the ideas at that stage. So if you're in a more orange stage, it's going to change the way that you're introverted or extroverted, perhaps. It might change the way that you're thinking and feeling. If you're a feeling type in an orange stage, you might be taking that Briggs-Myers test, and because of the values and virtues that you have at orange about thinking and being rational and all that kind of stuff, that actually might affect your test when you're taking it, even if you're a more feeling kind of person. It's hard to really test these things, is part of what I'm saying. And I'm also saying we can change and flux over time, and that doesn't necessarily prove our habits and our styles to be wrong. The thing about the Briggs-Myers test is it does seem like we have a lot of years of information about that kind of stuff. I don't know who's collecting it or what we're doing with it or whatever, but it would be interesting to start to figure out what's going on with this stuff. And for me personally, I'm not quick to just dismiss it and say that it's bullshit. I think that we need to rethink our fundamental assumptions about what types are in the first place and try and understand them better. Okay, so the next thing in terms of types that I'm going to talk about. I know a lot of people love astrology. There have been a lot of people who have been really critical of astrology. I'm not going to simply come down on one side or the other, a yay or nay. You're not going to hear me say astrology is bullshit. If that's what you're wanting, I'm sorry. I will say that a lot of people use it in superstitious and immature ways. How about that? We'll say that. I think it depends on what you think about it. If you think that measuring the stars and the star chart actually proves something about you, that's a causation-correlation fallacy. And a lot of the astrology that you would read in the newspaper are Barnum statements. I've already seen people prove that these kind of statements could apply to a lot of different people. It's not good evidence of astrology. What is there to it? It makes sense to think that there are patterns relating to seasons. People who are born at different times of year not only might that have some kind of an effect that's a pattern, not just in an environmental kind of way, but in a social kind of way, because there are certain things that happen throughout the year, even within our cultures and our societies, that might have an effect. I guess that's me trying to save the baby from the dirty bathwater, that some of these patterns might hold true, that there might be some poetic value in there. I wouldn't want to just dismiss it completely. But here's my main issue with it, just from an archetypal kind of perspective. I don't think it's good to ever say that you're one kind of archetype. Again, this is another way of limiting yourself and boxing yourself in. And this is why I like tarot cards way better than I like astrology. Tarot cards invite you to consider your life through the lenses of multiple archetypes, whereas astrology can want to reduce you to a particular archetype. So to be honest with you, I'm not a fan of astrology. It's hard not to roll your eyes a little bit when the average person talks about it. It doesn't really mean much to me. I think Briggs-Myers is a lot more reasonable and practical. I think introverts and extroverts, that's a real thing. People who are generally thinking and feeling types, that's a real thing. People who are more judging and perceiving, that's a real thing. You might say that they come and they go and they fluctuate and they change. Sure, if you're a coach and you're trying to work with someone, knowing that they're an introvert versus an extrovert is a real valuable distinction to be able to make. Knowing what their learning styles are, that's a real valuable, helpful thing. I try to do this too because I'm such an audio-visual kind of learner. It's easy to be like, oh, take these things that I like that work for me. But if you're a coach or you're working with a student who's not you, you have to figure out what their style is, what's going to work the best for them, and work with that. So I do think that types are an important lens. Okay, no one asked me about this, but we're going to talk about it a little bit. The Enneagram. The Enneagram, from what I understand, is based on the 7 deadly sins. This definitely does not seem to be a very scientific map. None of these maps are really that scientific. The one that seems the closest to being a reasonable scientific map is the Briggs-Myers map. That's why I'm not quick to want to throw that one away. If we can refine it and make it better and do something good with it, that would be a solution. The thing about the Enneagram map is it seems like there's something to it. I don't really know how it works or exactly what it's based on, but people are definitely using it as a way to seemingly find predictable kinds of patterns. And that's pretty interesting. So even if it's based on some nonsense, if it can predictably arrive at good conclusions based on its predictions, maybe there's something to it and we should take it seriously. Maybe we need to work on refining it and making it better. Maybe one of the things we can do with this UpdateAQAL stuff is devise tests to be able to work on making the types more reasonable and scientific and serious and actually refining them from our perspective. One of the main things I think is important about being an integral leader is that we need to stop waiting for someone else and stop asking for permission and start getting this done. If you're interested in this, if you think we need to be working on it, don't wait for someone else. Let's start working on it. There are people in our community who consider themselves to be experts in the Enneagram and things like this. Let's collaborate with them. Let's get a hold of them. And if they're integralists, they should understand the value of wanting to refine these maps and make them tighter and better and more well qualified. The types are the loosest and least well qualified part of the map, and yet we know that there's something to types. Okay, so Daniel is commenting something about the Enneagram. He says, the Enneagram origins. I had not heard the 7 deadly sins, but you make a good point that while the poetic and pre-modern origins of the system do create some questions of scientific integrity, it may not actually diminish its value. Yeah, this is also why when we want to bring these things back into the modern world, when we want to say that there's something valuable, it makes sense that we would want to try to explore it more and get a better understanding of what's actually going on in there. Who else can do it but people who can both understand the trans-rational value and also understand that it might really be getting at something? This might be the kind of work that's up to us to do. Orange is probably just going to pre-trans fallacy number 1, poo-poo it away, woo-woo it away, not really take it seriously enough, and that's a problem as well. What do you think? It'd be nice to get your feedback on this. Okay, the next question is from Josh. Hope you're doing well, bud. He's asking me about how to tell who's integral. With all the people who seem to be kind of close to integral, they seem to be making a lot of these distinctions, and yet still they wind up getting parts wrong. They mess it up. They get confused. So what's going on with that? How can we tell who and what is integral? What's a good test for that? This is a problematic topic. As we know, multiple lines grow up through stages. It's complicated. Some lines grow ahead of other lines. People can be mostly cognitive, not necessarily quite there in the transpersonal line, or maybe not quite really getting some of those transrational distinctions. For example, Sam Harris, he can take into account all 4 quadrants, and he's got a couple of issues that keep him from really being fully integral, but for the most part, he's got a lot of really good integral ideas, and a lot of his projects are great examples of integral in the mainstream. On this new podcast that I'm working on with Alyosha, Mario is saying that he thinks that Jordan Peterson is more integral than Sam Harris. Now, I don't think any of us want to say that either one of them is really fully integral. They both have integral ideas and insights. They both have an idea or 2 or 5 that are right up in there in the integral projects, but then they also have an inability to make some pretty important integral distinction in a few cases as well. This is what I've noticed. People don't grow in this simple, this stage, then this stage, then this stage, then this stage. It's not like that. If you're going to think about development, you can't just think about the person's development. You also have to consider the development of their parents and the culture, because the development of their parents is going to tell you a lot about the conditions that they were brought up in and the potential capacities their parents had to teach them, the values that were actually brought online and the values that might not have been brought online. When you consider the structure of the society and the ideas of the culture, it's easy to see how a person at Red can take Christian ideas or take postmodern ideas and use them as a way to be shields against you judging their ego. So only God can judge me, or no judging. An impulsive, egoic person might use their family's idea against them, or the culture's idea against them as a shield, when really they themselves haven't fully matured into those worldviews to really understand the values and the ideas behind why those groups or those worldviews are saying those things. You have people who might sound traditional or sound postmodernist. The words they're using are traditional or postmodernist, but it's not actually representative of their own development. It's more representative of the ideas that are around them that they can use in service of their own ego. This is why it gets to be a bit confusing. This is why it gets to be problematic to just talk about it in this kind of hard and fast way. Once you really get into the details of it, then you can start to make a little bit more sense of it. It's not just like, oh, well, this person's blue. No, it's not that simple. They might have blue ideas, but they might be holding them in a green way, or they might be holding them in a red way, might even be holding them in an orange way. Maybe they're fundamentalists or whatever, but you have to look past the ideas. When people study development and they do developmental tests, the way they really get at the stage is when they ask why. Not just, would you steal the medicine to save the life? Yes or no, but why? The why reveals the levels of complexity in the thinking. So, what does it mean to be fully up in an integral stage? What are the markers? What are the different lines that we have to get up there to be really up in there? The things that I would be like, all right, you're fully integral is like, are they transpersonal? Have they fully transcended the story of their ego? And are they living for God or for the universe or for the absolute? Are they fully dedicating themselves and their lives to the bigger picture? This is actually the full healthiness of what comes online at Blue, fully online, living for higher purpose beyond yourself. This is the root of that lotus or that flower that blooms in second tier. So transpersonal, transrational, what does that mean? This is the ego construct awareness of vision logic, those two threads. Ego awareness, transpersonal, construct awareness, transrational. This means that they understand the relative nature of language. They understand that the map is not the territory. Part of deconstructing your ego is realizing that all of that is just a story that we tell ourselves about ourselves. It's mythology. Those are, I would say, the two main veins of being integrally informed. It starts off in green and it grows up through integral and integrally informed stages. Let me see what Daniel Fox is saying here. The idea came up for me of linguistic aesthetic. It's an idea that reflects our language, indicates more progress than our being. It's kind of a take on the zone of proximal development, but without implying forward motion. Like, I can speak yellow, but really still just be in green. Oh, I like that. Yeah, because I think cognitive development or the understanding always runs ahead. It always runs ahead of us getting it too. Like, people talk about, you have the knowledge, but have you really realized it yet? It always starts like that. People realize something, they have the knowledge of something, and then they have some kind of an experience that really cements that knowledge. Oh, now I really see it. Yeah, that's for real. So it starts like that. It takes, they say, on average 5 years of working on it to move through stages of development. So people will start out talking integral, but it takes practice, practicing the map, practicing seeing through the map into the world, and then going out and talking to people, trying to meet people where they are to see if you can engage with them and help them right where they're at. It takes practice, and the more you do it, the more you teach integral theory, the more you understand it, the better you'll be able to live it, the more it'll come online for you. So going back to these stages of vision logic, we know that early stage vision logic is when these things are first starting to come online at green, and this is where all the pre-trans confusion happens. Very common. It's still a lot of people who say they're integral are for real green. To be really integrally informed is to not just understand these patterns, not just to be able to make distinctions. This is the other thing, is can you make the distinctions that help to separate the poetry from the fact claims? And are you able to use the proper tools in the proper places? Like, oh, this is a fact claim. Let's test it with rationality. This is poetry. Let me introspect to see about how that relates to my understanding of life and what it's like to be in the world and live this experience. Different tests for different types of claims. Is it a poetic claim? Is it a rational claim? Having what I like to call the cup and the sword firmly online. These are our transrational tools. The thing about being integrally informed is that we have integral methodological pluralism, which is not just including all the different types of methodologies, but understanding the strengths and limits of each of those methodologies to where you already know if we're talking about a particular type of data, this is the kind of test we use to get at that data, and we might want to correlate those bits of data to other data in other quadrants to really get a holistic understanding of what's going on. This is why I say Sam Harris is actually pretty integral, is because he knows how to get data from all four quadrants. He understands a lot of these things. So he's doing really good on the transpersonal stuff. He's doing really good on the epistemological stuff. His major issue is with still taking facts a little bit too seriously, not realizing that the map is not the territory. He still takes those a little bit too seriously, and that also keeps him from really valuing the poetry from a bunch of different traditions and realizing that this poetry can be just as legit of a way to talk about things as the rational ways. In fact, people are narrative-driven creatures, and the poetic stuff actually works better for most people. I think actually with his talks with Jordan Peterson, he is becoming a lot more receptive to both of these points, and I think he's learning a lot, growing further and further into integral, which is awesome. I also want to talk a bit about morality for a second. In terms of walking the walk, are we really applying integral utilitarianism, this kind of depth and span utilitarianism in our judgments? Are we able to measure depth and span and really do a good job of figuring out what is the best ethical decisions to make in life? Integral morality is probably more than just depth and span utilitarianism. I hope one day I can make a video about integral ethics or integral morality where we would talk about different systems in all four quadrants. Upper left is deontology, upper right is consequentialism, lower left is Aristotelian virtue ethics, and lower right would be this utilitarian depth and span. It's a lot more than just the utilitarian depth and span decision making. Here's the test. What do you think about eating animals? For example, I have been a vegan for over 10 years. I'm very healthy. I'm fine. I'm actually a lot more healthy than a lot of other people. We know that you don't have to kill animals to survive, and we know how horrible a lot of those situations can be. If we're doing utilitarian depth and span, it'd be better to kill a chicken than a cow or a pig. It'd be better to kill a fish or a snail or a shrimp than a chicken, and it'd be better to kill a carrot than any of that stuff. So on one hand, we want to decrease the depth of the animal that we kill. I would say that we want to try to kill the least complicated beings possible to make sure that we're participating in the minimal amount of suffering on the one scale. And on the other scale, we want to get things to be as local as possible. This isn't a hard and fast ism. It's not like I absolutely know this or absolutely know that. But are we trying to reduce our footprint in the world? This, I think, is really living it out, really caring about the value that we bring to the world versus the value that we take from the world. If you don't have to kill something that feels pain, that suffers, you shouldn't. I've killed a bird before and ate it. When I was young, I had kind of a traumatic experience where my family was really poor and on welfare, and I wanted to contribute. I was young. There was a field behind my house, and I went out there, crouched down behind the sagebrush. It was in Nevada. Grabbed a rock, and I saw this bird on a fence. Hit the bird with the rock and went over there and hit it with the stick. It played dead. It was a very traumatic experience for me, but I think back to it when I think about eating a meal. Here's a situation for you, a moral test, if you will. I'm serving stir fry. You can come up and get yourself some free stir fry. I have vegan stir fry with a fake chicken substitute, which is really good, and I have a chicken stir fry with real chicken. But if you want the chicken stir fry with the real chicken, you have to kill this chicken. Which would you prefer? Now, if you're not willing to kill that chicken, you should not be eating that chicken stir fry. And you're presented with this kind of test every single day, and yet most people don't think about the real consequences of their actions. And again, I sit here as an example before you of how you don't need to eat that second stir fry. You can eat this one and be totally fulfilled by it in terms of taste and texture and all of that, and be totally healthy. We don't need to participate in this. And I'm sorry if this is turning into a thing for veganism, but I think it's a good test. Do you really put your time and money where your mouth is? Are you really taking into account depth and span utilitarianism to the point where you would even be willing to make sacrifices and step out of your comfort zone to really try to help make the world a better place? I think I'm going to leave it on that. I'm sorry for getting preachy on you at the end. It's definitely something that we should think about. I think when we look back at our history, one of the main things that we're doing right now that we're going to be ashamed of when we mature as a species a little bit is the way that we treat our animals. I'm really hoping that with this new technology, with lab-grown meat, it'll become more and more affordable, and it'll be easy to say, okay, we have this lab-grown meat, it's the same price, it's real meat, let's stop doing this to these animals. Let's give them some basic rights, because we know that they are people and suffer and have feelings. They may not have language to talk like you and me, but we're talking about creatures that can get up to stage 4 and 5 of development. Like, my dog is a traditional conformist. Some dogs are strategic problem solvers. They go through the same stages of development that we do. Some of these animals have a high capacity for intelligence. Pigs are very smart. It breaks my heart when I think about people eating pigs and just being like, bacon, it tastes good. Everyone loves bacon. I think about my dog, how sweet and sensitive she is. How if anybody did that to my dog, I would be heartbroken and furious. And the fact that people just act like they don't care, that it's not a big deal, it's easy to brush it off and forget about it, man, it breaks my heart. I'm even getting emotional about it right now. It's not something that I bring up because I want to be preachy about it. It's something I bring up because there's like an animal holocaust going on at all times, and people just act like they don't don't care. That lack of care about other living creatures, it weighs heavy on me. It's really hard to live in a world where people just don't care like that. It's heavy. I hope we're outgrowing it, and I'm sorry to end on this note, but I love all you guys. I'm not trying to judge you. I ate meat for a very long time too, and I know how hard it is to change your diet. I'm gonna go ahead this time, and since I'm ending like this, I'm gonna leave a link down in the bottom for a video that I made with my buddy Kevin a while ago about should we go vegan. You can check on my YouTube page and see also I have a whole playlist of vegan foods that I make if you want to get inspired and maybe go Meatless Monday or something, work in that direction. For watching later on YouTube, like and subscribe, support me on Patreon. Thanks so much to my Patreons who are already subscribing. You mean so much to me. Your support means so much. Y'all have a wonderful evening. Thanks again. Peace.